Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm just going to make this a short episode. There's something that I'm noticing. I've been watching this COVID-19 and doing shows on it on here for a while now. On this particular channel is where I cover the COVID-19. And, I've been noticing more and more something very peculiar about this disease. And I'll tell you what it is. It's in the numbers. I might not be a disease expert, but I know math, and I can see it in the numbers. There's something very peculiar going on here. Also, a test was done in Italy, a town, and they took the 3,000 inhabitants and they tested them all for the virus. They found quite a few had it. They didn't know they had it. They didn't even feel sick. Something very peculiar going on here, because it seems like the numbers go up to a certain point and then they start tapering off. Instead of continuing with their exponential growth pattern, they seem to taper off. And this has kind of been a mystery to me. And, because it's a mystery, I've been mulling things over in my mind, about what this could be. Also, there's another thing is, you see an awful lot of people out there who are not exhibiting symptoms, that I think what's going on here is I think there is either more than one strain, or the virus possibly mutates. And what I mean by that is and I think the mutation, in my mind, doing this detective work on what's going on, I'm starting to think that it's some sort of mutation. I think the virus moves. I'll tell you what I'm thinking in my mind, just what I'm thinking. And this is not maybe what anybody else is thinking. But I think the virus moves into a new area rather suddenly and starts spreading through the population. And it has that deadly factor to it, the deadly factor we all see, where a virus can be quite deadly, and it can cause pneumonia. It can cause in the airways. It can cause them to become fibrous. It can cause lesions in the lungs, and it can cause difficulty breathing, and then people need to go on a respirator, and then they get worse and worse, and in the end they just can't breathe and stuff, and their lungs fill up with fluid and they die, That's the deadly part of this virus. But what if the virus moves into an area and there's like two parts to the virus? There's a mutated version that's extremely contagious, more contagious even than the deadly version. So it moves into an area, it causes a certain amount of deadly illness, but then it continues to move through unseen through that area as a more like a head cold, except maybe even a head cold with no symptoms, and extremely contagious, and a disease that manifests itself has a deadly side to it, but also it seems like it has a quick moving side to it. So it's almost like it's two diseases in one. It's almost like if you took a head cold, and you blended it with SARS, sort of thing, and maybe a head cold part of it's extending outwards from it. In other words, it mutates itself into a regular head cold, and then moves very quickly through the entire population, basically immunizing them. Because maybe the head cold version of it, that's just a head cold, or not even a head cold, maybe just you might feel a little bit off for a couple of days, and you don't even know what's wrong with you. You don't even know you got anything wrong with you. You feel fine. But you've had COVID-19, and then you get over it, and you start to feel better, and then it's like you're immunized. It's like you're not going to catch it then. But you don't even know you had it to not catch it. So you might be going out there being very careful, trying to social distance. You might have had it. It might be moving through the population far, 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 far more extensively than we could ever imagine, and far more quickly than we could ever imagine, as like a head cold version. And then it pops up in certain places and the deadly aspect comes out in it. In other words, it might be mutating back and forth. Maybe it's mutating into this head cold sort of thing, and maybe it's mutating back to the deadly version of it at a certain point. It's a very strange virus. And why I say it's strange is because I'm seeing this in the numbers. I'm starting to think to myself, hey, you know what? The Chinese didn't stop it at all. You had what I mean by that is, maybe it went through Wuhan as deadly, and then maybe it turned and changed and mutated into this just regular head cold. Maybe all the Chinese are having a head cold right now, basically head cold version of it, and they're not really getting all that ill. And so the Chinese government is basically claiming victory when it was the virus that gave them the victory. This is what I'm starting to think now, because look, in Wuhan, this thing was totally out of control. And all those people left Wuhan, something like 5 million people scurried out of there to every different part in China. You think they didn't carry the virus with them? Sure they did. But maybe they carried a mutated version of the virus that basically it's not deadly. And maybe it's spreading all through China as we speak, this mutated version. It's not so deadly. Maybe it's still deadly, but maybe not in an uncontrollable way where the Chinese government can't control the situation. So obviously, if that were to happen, they would just accept what's happening and claim victory. I mean, I'm looking at scenarios like that in my mind, saying to myself, what if? Now, that's all I'm doing to you guys. I'm not saying that's what this is doing. I'm just saying, what if? And this would explain a lot of things. It would also mean that the United States right now, for every case you see where somebody is going in and getting tested, it might be the deadly version. There might be 100 people out there, or even 1,000 people out there, where the virus is mutated into some less deadly version that they have. You see what I mean? And we might be 3/4 or even halfway through this thing already. In other words, everybody out there being immune to the virus because they've had either the deadly version or the mutated, less deadly version. Maybe something like that's going on. Now, I'm just speculating, guys. I'm just guessing at this thing. But I'm starting to think in my mind, this could all be over an awful lot quicker than most people out there think. We might be a lot further advanced into this disease, and an awful lot of people out there might have it that you don't know have it, and they don't know they have it themselves, and so they're not going to go in for testing. And nobody will ever know they had it. And they'll get over it, have a cough for a week or two, and they'll get over it, and go back to work. You know? This thing might blow over an awful lot quicker than I thought, you know? But still, kind of a test for this thing to see if it's really how extensively really is it out there is the prison system, the nursing home system, these different institutions, also big hotels and stuff like that. When it starts moving through places like that more extensively, then you'll know that the disease has actually got a more extensive foothold on the country. So I do expect it to increase. But I'm half thinking that I'm right about this. That we're much deeper into it. And that there's an awful lot more people out there that have already got herd immunity than what they're claiming. And that and it's spreading. I believe it's spreading much faster than they know. Much, much faster than they know. And I think we're going to be done with this thing. I don't think it's coming back for another shot next winter. I think it's doing everything it can do right now to stay alive. I think this thing moves so fast that if it doesn't move, it dies out. If it doesn't find new victims to infect, and quickly, then in a couple weeks, it's gone. So it's got to constantly find new fresh victims to infect. And the people that's already infected, well, they're done and over with it. They're probably not going to catch it again. And if they do catch it again, I mean, it's not going to last very long. It'll just be sniffles. And more than likely they don't catch it again. And this thing, if it can't keep finding new, ever-expanding people to infect, well, what's it going to do? It's going to wither up and die and disappear. And I think that's what's going to happen. And I think we're much, much further ahead into this thing than most people think. I think we could be as far as halfway through it already. And I mean, it just started in the United States, basically a few weeks ago. I mean, really got a toehold and started to really expand in the United States. I think we might be more than halfway through it already. And where we'll hit our peak, maybe a couple 100,000 infected, according to their numbers. But the real numbers might be millions and millions infected. Might be 100 million or 200 million infected, and they'll still be saying, well, it's 100,000 or 200,000. What are they up to now? Let me just take a look here. The United States here, 60,000 something. 60,000 and something, right? They're saying now, well, it might be millions. And by the time they get up to, I mean, they can only process these infection things. They have to first do the test, and then they have to go and process that, and then it has to go through the officials and authority and everything before it's finally recorded. Right? First off, the person's got to be extremely ill, so you'd have to have the bad version of this, whatever it is. You'd have to have a bad case of it. Well, how many people are having a light case of it that aren't being reported and aren't even going in to get tested? Maybe 1,000 to that one guy. The one guy that gets tested, the one guy gets super sick, has to go into the hospital, and they finally test him and go through all that rigmarole, and then they put him on a number here on the chart for 60,000. For every one of those guys, there might be 1,000 people out there with sniffles. That aren't going in, aren't getting tested. So we don't know about them because they're not on the list. We might be an awful lot further into this thing. And that being the case, we might be an awful lot quicker to where it's going to peak. And I'm thinking in my mind right now, we got 60 some odd thousand. I'm thinking it's probably going to go up to a couple 100,000 of these actual recorded cases. And then it's probably going to peak. But by the time they get up to writing down a couple 100,000 of these people that are infected, officially infected, there might be 150 million Americans who've had it as a version of some sort of a sniffles or whatever, But eventually it'll make its way into these nursing homes, and then we'll see more casualties. We'll see the casualty increase go way up, It'll make its way into the nursing home system and into the penal systems and into the prisons and into institutions and into the homeless population. And this is when we'll start to see a bigger mortality toll than we're seeing. So we're not out of the woods yet with this thing. Part of the key to this thing might be people that have kept their immune system strong. Might get through it an awful lot quicker and easier. So you want to work on that, keeping your immune system up, because this thing might be an awful lot more people out there have it than what you know. You might, as you're watching this show, you might even have the darn thing. And so you want to keep your immune system very strong, going through this and hope for the best. And, we're going to come out of this on the other side of this thing. And I believe it's going to disappear. I anticipated that all along. I've been saying that all along, that I believe this thing's going to disappear. Probably before the end of this year. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. I'm going to try to stay on top of this thing for you guys. And on top of it even more than these other guys. These other guys, it seems like they always catch up with me about a month or two later, then I hear them always saying the things that I've been saying a month or two earlier. And I see this happening here. Whatever it is, it's strange. It's not fitting in with exponential growth. And that's why it's in my head. All of a sudden, it's like ringing bells. It's like, what's going on here? Something going on here with this thing. It seems like it goes up to a certain number, like it did in China, went up to 80,000, and then all of a sudden, it's like, where is it? Where'd it go? Did the Chinese really get control over it? And then I'll watch it do it again in South Korea. And I'm like, I think about that, And then I start to see it now, starting to do it in Italy. It's like they get up to a peak number, and then all of a sudden new cases start to drop off. And I say to myself, hey, could the same thing happen here in the United States? Could the same thing happen in Spain and in Germany and so on? I start to see a little pattern develop there, And it doesn't fit in with exponential growth, because I know Italy's got 73,000 cases, and I know there's 60 million people live there. So with exponential growth, we probably should see the caseload right now up to like 500,000 growing in Italy, if it was truly exponential, Something going on. There's something weird going on with this, and I'm going to try to stay on top of it. Catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.